The last few months have seen some huge changes in the GPU market, with brand new models from NVIDIA, AMD, and even Intel, alongside crazy graphics card pricing, and even some of last gen's options having been discontinued too. That's why in today's video, I'll be walking you through the best GPUs to buy right now, and what options you should actually consider for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K gaming at a range of different budgets. Let's do this. The Corsair Frame 4000D is here and better than ever. With a spacious and fully modular design, you can configure this case to meet your build's exact needs. Improved airflow at the front and on the side helps to keep temperatures down, while Corsair's new InfiniRail mounting system allows you to adjust fan rails for added versatility and a cleaner aesthetic. What's more, it's compatible with reverse connector motherboards, 360mm all-in-one radiators, and comes with an integrated GPU anti-sag arm. Learn more and check it out at the first links in the description below. I'm going to cover three main topics in today's video, starting off firstly with the lowdown on all the graphics cards that have released in the last couple of months, before secondly talking about why the pricing is so high and when and how this may change, before finally walking through my recommendations for 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And feel free to use the timestamps below to skip through the video as you wish. Firstly, let's discuss everything that's released in the last 12 or so weeks. NVIDIA have brought us their first cards from their new 50 series lineup, ranging from the most expensive RTX 5090 through to the 5080 and cheaper 5070 and 5070 Ti. Intel have released their Arc B580 and B570, two budget-oriented GPUs, while AMD have kicked off their RDNA 4 lineup with their RX 9070 XT and non-XT variant. Now, if you're wondering where these cards sit, here they are ordered by their MSRP, and you can see that Intel are bringing in the cheapest cards of the stack, NVIDIA are comfortably the most expensive, while AMD sits somewhere in between. Now, of these GPUs, the Arc B580, AMD Radeon RX 9070 XT, and NVIDIA's RTX 5090 are regarded as the standout from these lineups. NVIDIA's 50 series launch, on the other hand, has been a total mess, and one of their worst GPU launches ever, with performance issues on quite a few of their cards and massive price gouging across both resellers but also primary retailers. As if it wasn't bad enough for NVIDIA, the newest RTX 5070 provided disappointing performance, hence my pretty scathing review video, while the 5070 Ti now also offers up what looks like questionable value when you look at AMD's new release, but more on that in a moment. Currently, AMD is set to be the big winner from all of this. They represent a more polished lineup than Intel's impressive but plucky Arc GPUs, while giving you the performance and reliability you'd typically expect from NVIDIA, but at a price that some of you might actually be able to afford. Now that brings me to the next section of today's video. We need to talk about why GPU pricing is like it is, why GPUs are so expensive, and how this might change. Now essentially, AMD and NVIDIA decided to release their new cards just after the turn of the new year. It meant the retailers that you buy from knew these new cards were coming and discounted the existing 40 series and RX 70 series lineups heavily across Black Friday and shifted any stock they had left over Christmas. That meant that in the gap between the old cards having sold out and the new cards having arrived, pricing has just gone crazy. It also makes buying new GPUs worse because there aren't the last gen older options to fall back on. Here in the UK, you just can't buy a 4070 Super or 4070 Ti Super, not just for MSRP, but at all. While I know certainly over in the US, the RTX 4090 has basically disappeared off the face of the earth. Now, as the stock and supply situation improves for the new GPUs, this is going to get better, but unlike before in the big GPU crisis when everyone was crypto mining, this shortage isn't caused by an external factor. Instead, NVIDIA and AMD releasing their new lineups at plainly a terrible time. So with that negativity out the way and some crucial context on the GPU market, what should you buy? And let's start off with my recommendations at 1080p. Now at 1080p, there are three different cards that I would urge you to take a look at. If you want to go NVIDIA, I would recommend the RTX 4060. At its MSRP pricing, this will set you back around $299. The Arc B580 would be my preferential bet based on its competitive MSRP that makes it at that price cheaper than NVIDIA's 4060. Currently, this card is a little hard to find, and as such, pricing has unfortunately risen quite sharply. While from AMD, I would urge you to look at the RX 7700 XT. Now, overall, from these three cards, the Arc card is the best option on balance. At its MSRP price or even slightly above, it's going to give you the best cost per frame performance with great 1080p gaming performance across the board. In Cyberpunk 2077, for example, at 1080p high rasterization, the B580 pulls in over 100 frames per second, leaving its AMD and NVIDIA counterparts for dust. Turn ray tracing and upscaling on, admittedly at a higher res, and the B580 impresses again, while in Hogwarts Legacy you still get an impressive 90 FPS at 1080p high rasterization. You get a comfortable amount of VRAM, far more than the 8GB you'll find on NVIDIA's 4060, and Intel's ray tracing and XeSS upscaling, that's their version of DLSS and FSR you'll find on NVIDIA and AMD GPUs, is actually really good, better than AMD I would say. It's power efficient too, and unlike the previous gen ARC cards which were just a bit crap, it's actually really impressive. The problem is that for below $300 it's kinda hard to buy, which leads me to recommend this, the NVIDIA RTX 4060. Now in many ways this card is far from perfect. It only has 8GB of VRAM, which is in my opinion not really enough, and when you compare it to the last gen RTX 3060 it just doesn't provide that impressive of a bump. Plus NVIDIA's kind of in everyone's bad books right now, so recommending this card is probably a little unfashionable, but compared to the ARC card at current pricing, it is the better deal. Now as far as the other option, my third choice goes, this would be the RX 7700 XT. Now this is the most powerful of the three cards, but again, it's the most expensive. It gives you 12GB of VRAM and arguably is more comfortable at 1440p than 1080p. This is particularly evident in games like Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 at 1080p high, where the 7700 XT pulls in just shy of 140 FPS, beating out pretty much all of my other 1080p GPU recommendations, while Apex Legends sees it soar to nearly 300 FPS on average, and Cyberpunk sees the 7700 XT at 1080p raster sit firmly at the top of our charts. For those of you shopping on a budget, it's likely going to be out of the price range, but unlike the 7800 XT and the entire 7900 series, it hasn't been discontinued, meaning that we should continue to be able to buy this card for a little bit longer. But what if you want 1440p gaming and you've got more than $350 to spend on a new GPU? Well, for me, again, I would give you three choices, each with their own pros and cons. The first would be the AMD RX 7800 XT. This is a particularly stunning white sapphire pure design, which I think looks absolutely amazing. On the NVIDIA side, I've got the 4070 non-super. Might seem like a weird choice, I'll come back to it in a moment. And then on the AMD side, I've got their new 9070 XT. The reason I've picked the RTX 4070 as one of my recommendations is that unlike the 4070 Super, you can still buy one in some areas. And on the used market, I'd imagine we're going to see a few of these as people look to upgrade to AMD's significantly more powerful 9070 XT. The reason that I would recommend this over the 5070 is that A, the 5070 has been subject to huge price gouging, and B, because the 5070 just doesn't represent that much of a performance jump. Now, of course, at MSRP, this and the 5070 are the same, so it makes no sense to buy this GPU where MSRPs are concerned. But as we've seen from NVIDIA, in the market over the last few months, the MSRP means nothing anymore and just cannot be trusted. As such, the RTX 4070 is a really good backup plan and still gives you great DLSS and NVIDIA's standout ray tracing performance. The 7800 XT is another card which we are expecting a replacement from AMD in the form of their 9000 series. AMD have confirmed this is coming in Q2, which could be April, May or June, but in its current form, the 7800 XT provides great performance. You get 16GB of video memory, meaning you can tune those textures up to high and you're going to be fine. You get performance that rivals and in many instances beats out the RTX 4070, and while things like FSR and AMD's ray tracing just aren't as good as the NVIDIA counterpart, you're still getting that technology. And let's face it, most people are bothered more about rasterization anyway. Rasterization is just pure gaming performance with no AI trickery involved. Now, if you've got more money to spend, why not look at this, the new AMD 9070 XT. This card launched literally a week or so ago, and launched alongside a cheaper non-XT variant. Basically, they're the same GPU design, but the non-XT is stripped right back and loses a lot of performance over its bigger brother XT GPU. This is evident in Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 Zombies, where at 4K high raster, the 9070 XT pulls in 112 FPS to the 9070's 100 or so, while Hogwarts Legacy sees the card take an even more sizable lead, around 14 frames per second different, with 94 versus 80 on the non-XT variant, and Marvel's Rivals, where there's there's a good 6 places between the 9070 XT and the RX 9070, with 87 versus 70 frames per second on average. Now at $599, that's the MSRP, the manufacturer suggested retail price, this is a great deal. It delivers fantastic performance, beating out the NVIDIA 4070 Ti Super from last gen and their new 5070 Ti, and also leaving the GRE for dust, a card that I would have previously recommended in and around this price point. Again, the big problem is the supply of this card right now just isn't that good, meaning these other 1440p options may be what you're forced to go for if you want a card in the current climate. Now, where this video gets complicated and actually kind of difficult is 4K, because plainly speaking, there just really aren't any options. Now, let's discount Intel and AMD first. Intel's easy, they don't have any 4K GPUs. Moving on. AMD have the 7900 XT and the 7900 XTX, but both of those cards have been discontinued too. And I spoke to a UK retailer that I won't name who said they're not getting any more ever again, making my recommendation of those cards in today's video kind of hard. For the next few weeks, you might be able to pick up an XT or an XTX in and around MSRP. And if you can, that's the best 4K GPU to buy. But look into the future, and these two cards, and you might not like it, are gonna be your only options. I am of course talking about the RTX 5080 and RTX 5090. Now I can hear the boos in the comments. James, it's missing ROPs. James, NVIDIA have ripped everybody off. James, I can't buy these GPUs. I know, but AMD are discontinuing their high-end GPUs with no replacement in sight. The 40 series cards have been discontinued and are not being delivered to retailers anymore, meaning this is what we have left. Now the 5090 is of course the card that you're going to buy if you want the best performance possible and you have a budget that's virtually unlimited. It's insane. The performance is unbelievable, and NVIDIA have done a phenomenal job making this card. They're just going to charge you a lot of money for the privilege of owning one. That leaves the RTX 5080 with its $1,000 MSRP as the 4K option. The problem you've got is that, well, the MSRP you're never going to see it, at least not right now. Again, I don't want to blow it out of proportion. The 50 series has sold out because it's popular, and while NVIDIA's poor timing doesn't help as far as future stock and availability goes, things will get better. And when they do, the 5080 at its MSRP is a really compelling option. Remember, this is $200 cheaper than the 4080 launched for a couple of years ago. And while $1,000 is not cheap for a gaming PC, you could easily fit this into a capable $2,000 build that would just smash it for 4K gaming. It's really hard right now because although AMD have got new cards in the 9070 and the 9070 XT, both of which I was pretty impressed with, the XT more so than the non-XT variant, without their competition at the high end, I'm afraid to say NVIDIA will have a free run and will be able to charge broadly whatever the hell they like, and we'll have no choice but to pay it or not pay it. I'll link my recommendations down below for latest pricing and availability. And if you happen to be watching this video towards the end of 2025, I probably have a more up-to-date version, but pricing and availability by that point should be a lot better. And things in the GPU market can change fast. So don't get too disheartened, and good luck buying a GPU for your next gaming PC.